Welcome. I'm Ted Sheriff, Park Manager of Quail Hollow State Park. Quail Hollow State Park, in conjunction with the Quail Hollow Volunteer Association, recognizing a need for greater public awareness of the declining condition of our natural environment, hosted a roundtable discussion on environmental values. Experts in many areas of environmental study were invited to the park to offer presentations covering a wide range of interests pertaining to various topics of our natural world and our human role in it. The following program is one in a series to emerge from that discussion. Hello and welcome to our roundtable discussion of environmental values. Welcome to Quail Hollow State Park. And I truly want to welcome you to Quail Hollow State Park. It's a pleasure to do so. And Quail Hollow State Park, briefly, is a little different type park for the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, and we're real pleased that it is. It fills a special niche in the Ohio Department of Natural Resources and has a very particular focus. And some of you may know the park well. Some of you may have noticed on your visit here today, on your entrance, that you didn't see the typical lake and campground and so on. And that's part of that special niche and special theme of this state park. It is devoted to the educational study and appreciation of our outdoor world. And as a part of our pursuit of that theme, we are real pleased to have you here today with us for a roundtable discussion on environmental values, which will be sociologically oriented, should be applicable, should have something for every one of you, if not many things, to think about and take home and perhaps live out, we hope, in the future. There's a number of deserving thank yous which I wish to extend before we open the actual discussion portion. And I want to first of all thank the other half of the steering committee, perhaps first and foremost, for a great deal of devotion and hard work in presenting this and bringing it together. And you'll be seeing her throughout the day, and that's Park Naturalist Barbara Fiolka. Would you raise?
We're pleased to have with us Mr. Charley Harper, who is from Cincinnati, Ohio. He is a producer of paintings and illustrations for the national parks, New York Entomological Society, the Golden Book of Biology, the Animal Kingdom, and Charley Harper's Birds and Works. And his limited edition serigraphs are published by Mill Pond Press. We're pleased to have with us Mr. Charley Harper.
Well, I wanted to start off by showing you one of my fairly recent pictures, just so you'll get an idea of how I work. This is a picture that I wrestled with a long time. It's my courtship of the humpback whale. And I had a hard time coming up with a title for this. Finally, it occurred to me that a courtship of this magnitude would be on the order of an earthquake. So I called it Romance on the Richter Scale. You talk about a heavy date. It's their big love scene, a gigantic, frantic, romantic antic in the Atlantic. Look out for the bridal tidal wave when they sink to entwine in the brine. Seriously, humpbacks are colossal, but they're docile. And that's lucky for us, but it's mighty unlucky for them, because while they practice nonviolence, we preached the golden rule and perfected the harpoon. Well, I've been trying to contribute to environmental awareness for a larger part of my life through my pictures. And one of the things I've learned is that when you're trying to preach a sermon, if you can throw in a little bit of humor, you might have more success with it. Here's where my life began, on this farm in West Virginia, and this is where I learned about ecology. It's a word that I didn't even hear until 30 years later, but I found out what it was. On this farm, 100 acres in the Appalachian foothills, 100 acres of hills and valleys and bottomland that we use for raising crops. We had a great garden, a great orchard. We had horses, cows, sheep, pigs, chickens, the whole cast of characters, and the whole system was so delicately balanced and so interdependent and so self-sustaining that my family and I, who of course were at the top of the food chain, survived the Great Depression in fine style living on this farm. It's interesting to me that years later, when I began to start painting, I transferred this idea of ecology to the picture, because after all, a picture is nothing more than a little ecosystem surrounded by a frame. And of course, you can think of many analogies between ecology and painting. If you get the wrong color in there, or if you get too much of a color, it can eat up the other colors. If you overpopulate it with the wrong kind of shapes or too many shapes, you'll end up with chaos. So it's my feeling that this feeling of picture as an ecosystem is what creates the lure of painting for artists as well as viewers, because in a world of chaos, the artist can create an ordered universe inside the rectangle, and the artist is master of the universe. I first was beguiled by the wild on the farm, and I know the creatures that did it. It was these little guys, the water strider, who skate around on the surface of the water without falling through. If it's a shallow stream and a sunny day, they will cast shadows underneath themselves on the bottom, just like this. And for me, this constant interchange between the constant shifting of the insect in relation to the shadows is one of the most interesting events in nature. I used to watch these guys when I lay on the creek banks on the farm, and I never forgot it. 30 years later, I painted this picture, and it is still one of my favorites. I went away to art school and learned to paint realistically, which I believe is important for all artists. This is my grandmother, by the way. And I think you have to learn how to put everything in before you will know what you can leave out successfully. You have to control nature before you can distort it. So this is where I began, but also in my commercial art classes, I was doing flat, hard edge, simple stuff like this. This is how I ended up. And here's one of my first pictures with the new style. I think flat, hard edge, and simple and funny. And instead of trying to put everything in when I paint, I try to leave everything out. I try to reduce nature to the simplest possible terms without losing the identity of creatures, and I believe that I thereby enhance identity. I call it minimal realism. I like to say that when Audubon painted a picture, he had to count all the feathers in the wings, and all I do is I just count the wings. Well, my style firmed up like you see in this picture. I look at creatures in the same way that an architect might when he's drawing a house, a direct front view, direct side view, plan view. And always I find that one of those views gives me best the uniqueness of that creature. Cardinals come off best for me from the front because you see the crest and the bib. From the side, this doesn't do as much for me. But note that by painting flat and hard edge, I can give you a cardinal that's bright red from side to side in every direction. If I were painting realistically, I could give you a bright red spot on the breast perhaps, but then I'd have to start shading into dirty browns to make him look like he was round. One thing I always like to do is to take the unexpected point of view. You've probably seen hundreds of pictures of owls about to catch mice, but did you ever see it? Did you ever see it from the worm's eye view? Well, I discovered ladybugs somewhere along the way because I needed a red spot right there in that grouping mural for the Ford Motor Company. Every artist saves a picture with a red spot sooner or later. this one was spatial. I realized that the ladybug was a spatial little creature, and I began to research it, learned that ladybugs and people have been pals ever since time began, that ladybugs are the only bugs that don't bug anybody. They're the only insects that people don't instinctively swat or stomp or spray. The only insects people feel okay about having in their homes, where they often hibernate. And I knew people who were flattered and pleased to find ladybugs crawling on them. Well, one of the reasons for that is this, represented by this ad that appeared in the newspapers back in the 60s when the great ecological crisis came upon us. These ads urged us to use ladybugs instead of DDT. The rationale was that if you have a rose garden that's suffering from aphiditis and you had given up on home remedies and tired of transplants, and you had grown agnostic about technological faith healing, by which I mean let us spray, then you were advised to try ladybugs. And this is what they promised would happen to your aphids. In no time at all, you'd be down to the last one. Well, I got a chance to illustrate this biology book, and it was during this job that I decided to devote my life to nature illustration. There was so much wonderful form, color, texture, all of the things that artists love in nature. Plus, I became very much involved in animal behavior, and am still focusing on animal behavior, particularly as it relates to human behavior. And I think I do it without crossing the anthropomorphism border, which is a forbidden thing to do. And here's one of the pictures in this book on which I began to deal with behavior. I'm showing you at the top the mother lion teaching the babies to hunt. Later I made a print of this picture that I called Hungry Eyes, and I wrote about it that the family that prays together stays together. Then came the animal kingdom. I must tell you that these two books are the closest thing I've ever had to a course in these subjects. I am not a trained naturalist, but I have a lot of good friends who are, and I can pick their brains when I need to. But for these books, I really had to dig deep. Obviously, you can't illustrate a book without knowing something about the subject. So this is where I really took off. This is out of the animal kingdom. This is ladybugs hibernating. Then in the past 25 years, I've produced a series of over 100 wildlife art prints, serigraphs, limited edition serigraphs. Here we see spring wildflowers of the eastern woodlands, bear in the birches, Mr. Beaver. Mr. Beaver is a part of our national heritage. He represents our work ethic. He's that character we all have this gnawing sensation we ought to keep us busy as. Mr. Beaver is in the business of impounding water, and it happens that his cost-benefit ratio and his environmental impact statement are better than the Corps of Engineers by a damn sight. Here's my buzzard picture. I call it Buzz Off, You Turkey. If you're a turkey buzzard, it's likely that your only buddies will be other turkey buzzards, and if they give you the wrong end of the short end of the stick, like this guy on the right is getting, then you've got nothing left but your legacy, which is living off life's leftovers. Sure, we know that buzzards help to clean up the garbage of the world, and maybe even help to reduce the air pollution index a bit. But would you invite one to dinner? If you did, he wouldn't eat what you'd serve, and you wouldn't serve what he'd eat. And besides, his table manners are awful. I painted this picture called Green Cuisine, first of all, to celebrate the Holstein cow, which is one of my favorite creatures, mainly because it illustrates so well the concept of variations on a theme. All these cattle are perhaps the same size, same shape, but that wonderful black and white pattern can occur at random. You can put it anywhere you want. So the artist can make any kind of a jigsaw puzzle he wants out of a herd of Holsteins. Also, I wanted to say that a trip to the salad bar is the first course in Mother Nature's fast food chain. and the harmless herbivores are the ones who must make it. After that, the cuisine turns mean as the carnivores get into the act, and it ends up with us, who must constantly wrestle with the unanswerable question, can a nature lover ever find true happiness at the top of the food chain? Raccoons I've painted often. We have them living around the house, coming to be fed. And this is one of my favorites of the raccoon pictures. It's raccooniscence. These guys are raccoon-loitering the skunk, who has got the dog food cornered for the moment. And of course, the skunk has the bomb. Centuries ago, skunks won the animal arms race, glands down. And since that time, they have walked among us in peace, using their terrible weapon only as a deterrent. On the other hand, the raccoon has the brain. With his upwardly mobile lifestyle, he's making it big in the suburbs. And I say, heaven help us if the raccoon ever gets the bomb. I've painted a bunch of posters for environmental groups, nature-oriented groups, starting with our Cincinnati Nature Center 25 years ago when they opened. This was my first go at trying to show as many as possible life forms that occur in a given situation. This is followed by our Hamilton County Parks poster. And Ruth, this reminds me of something you said. You see the kite in this poster? Well, there was some consternation when I showed this painting to the parks because they said, why is the kite in there? We just wanted to show the wildlife. And I said, the kite is there because these parks are for people, and people pay taxes to support the park, so I believe they have a right to be represented. For our Cincinnati Zoo's wonderful insect world display. I've done 10 posters for the national parks, Glacier Bay, and again trying to get as many as possible of the creatures that live in those situations into the picture. Well, this is not one of my funny pictures. This is serious stuff about the neotropical migrants that are coming back from the tropics in ever-decreasing numbers every year. In this picture, I've tried to show most of the species that have been most affected. There are 50 to 60, I believe, on the list now. Most of them warblers, but also many songbirds. And my personal favorite, the wood thrush, is on here. Every spring, I have a date marked on the calendar when he's supposed to come back, and so far he has done it to my woods, but I don't know how long it will go on. Nobody's quite sure of the whole reason for this decrease. Maybe tropical rainforest destruction, maybe fragmentation of habitat on this end of the trail, which permits cowbird depredation. Whatever the reason, it's like the canary in the coal mine. It's telling us something, and I think it's something awful. Back in the 60s, when the bald eagle was seriously endangered, more so than now, I painted this editorial eagle who's saying to us, hey, you crazy Americans, lay off. You're about to wipe out your national emblem with your illegal shooting and your insecticides. It reached a point back then when if a baby bald eagle were successfully born, it was a real ecological event. There's an ancient fable about an eagle who was downed by an arrow guided by his own tail feather. And the moral, I think, is relevant to our situation. We are sowing the seeds of our own destruction. Yep.
Thanks for watching. We hope you'll join us again when we present the next segment of a roundtable discussion on environmental values.
Hall of Fame, a magical museum, meeting place, and Mecca, where names and achievements are enhanced by time.
This is a long way from that little kid that used to love to go to store for his mother because when she needed Italian bread, it looked like a football. And he could take it and toss it up into the air and then run from the store to his home yelling, Robustelli's on the 50, he's on the 40, he's on the 30. And when he got down to the goal line, he'd be home.
Throw it deep. Anybody can throw wide. Let's go deep. Got him playing the huddle swan. Let's throw a hook. John say, Brad, I got him on a deep curl. 50 yards. Throw it deep. Let's go deep. Intercepted. Oh, God. Wasn't it fun? Didn't y'all like seeing that stuff fly down there? I mean, it was fun. What a ride.
It is here where legends endure and heroes never grow old. Kansas Comets, Galloping Ghosts, Deacons, and Kings live forever. It's the home of Broadway Joes, Papa Bears, and the Golden Boys of Fall.
We love Lombardi. It was a special time and a special team. There was a genuine love on that football team, and I was glad to be a part of it.
Coach Bryant and Mrs. Bryant, wherever you are, we miss you.
If I could start my life all over again, I would be a professional football player, and you damn well better believe I'd be a Pittsburgh Steeler.
State-of-the-art interactive displays trace the game's evolution. It's a crossroads where the young learn, the old remember, and everyone shops. Discovered here is everything from Tom Dempsey's shoe to Bob Greasy's glasses.
One of the things I'm remembered for most are my glasses. And my glasses have been in here for 10 years. And he says, Dad, that's as close as you're ever going to get to the Hall of Fame. In your face, Brian.
In July, the nation's focus is on Canton for pro football's greatest weekend. It all begins with the mayor's breakfast, an early wake-up call for presenters and enshrinees. The fashion show luncheon is a hot ticket and a world-class event, and the glitz and glamour spills into the night at the Cultural Center at the enshrinees' dinner. The Grand Parade is a nationally televised event unto itself, where thousands take in the sights and sounds. The Hall of Fame game christens a new season and brings to a close a memorable weekend as the game's greatest are cast in bronze.
I'm so happy that my beautiful mother is here to be able to share with us the meaning of today. For she and my father, who passed away several years ago, were always beside me. They were always sensitive to my needs as a player and as their youngest son. So I try to, like this said, or give away a smile and thank you to my mother.
Art Rooney. Boy, I love that man. I know you're watching, Art. I love you. You are always by me. I love you so much. Thank you. Pittsburgh, hey, I love you. Thank you. Thank you.
I want to thank you very much, all of you, for making my day in the sun so memorable. Thank you.
The Hall of Fame, an ever-changing time capsule of America's greatest game. The keepers of the flame, a flame that must be fed and nurtured, one that must burn bright for the stars and fans of tomorrow.